Okay, y'all, welcome to How the Business is Played. So, I am Sharice Williams, an award winning and recent Hall of Fame marketing executive in the areas of brand. Thank you. Brand, sports, entertainment with the likes of Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Under Armour, Coca Cola, American Express, a wide range of brands I've had the privilege to work with, and excited to talk to you about the business of sports. And I am here with
Monica McNutt, ESPN MSG Network's basketball analyst covering both the Knicks here in New York and the NBA, WNBA, and women's college basketball when I have the opportunity to for ESPN. So I'm excited to team up with you, Sharice, and just kind of powwow on all the really cool things that are happening in the space right now, particularly around women's sports.
absolutely. And like, why are we doing this? So, women's sports is booming. I think they said in 2025 that this is going to be around a 2.3, 2.4 billion industry, which is an increase of like 25% or something like that from last year. Like, people are locked in. I mean, we're not new to this, but people are new to this. So, I can say that as I talk to brands that I've been consulting, some of them have been involved in women's sports for a while. So, kudos to them for being involved early and for investing. And some are trying to figure it out and they're not sure about their way in. And there's all these questions: pro sports, NCAA, NIL, where do I start? And I felt like if people were asking me questions, some of them are very basic, some are detailed, that others may have that point of view. And why not bring that perspective here for others to hear? And Monica, I know you have great perspective as it relates to the business of sports.
Yeah, but I got to be honest. For me, I am looking forward to learning what you know and what you've seen and how brands are moving in the space. Unfortunately, although we'll call it an opportunity here, I still feel like there are brands that are late to the party, which I find to be fascinating. But we are recording our first conversation in March, the first weekend of March Madness, both on the men's and women's side in particular. This afternoon, I actually just left a Gotham FC game. They played the Orlando Pride over in Jersey. And so there's a lot of like notes buzzing in terms of one of the premier stretches for women's sports. So I'm excited to get into this combo.
Yes, yeah. So, like, one thing I think it's worth saying that fans of women's sports are unique. And this has been my experience, right? I'll use my mom as an example. She's been a season ticket holder of University of South Carolina Lady Gamecocks women's basketball team since Don Staley signed on. So way back when they were losing and the stands were empty. So she, all her friends have been rocking with this team before they became a multi national champion. And they have opinions on brands that should have been doing more. And so,
Mm.
quite frankly, this is not a safe space for everyone to just step into, because there are opinions, because they've been rocking for a long time and they knew that the fans were worthy, that the players were worthy, that the coaches were worthy. So, in one instance, for some brands, like, they're a little late to the party and they don't understand that fans have had their eyes on this and it's not new to them. So, how you show up, you need to do it the right way because the expectations are high, right? And even for brands that are new to the space, same thing. They know the product in and out. They
Hmm.
know what to expect there, right? You, brand, are the one that's new to the game. So you have to understand that these people that you're trying to reach understand what it's supposed to be like. So it's really important to ensure that you are walking into spaces knowledgeable and not thinking that a one size fit all marketing strategy is going to work, because they're unique.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And I know even for me, frankly, trying to tap into some of this energy myself, it is important to be able to have a conversation with brands because, to your point, like I've been in it. I can tell you what weekends probably things are going to pop and when people are going to be talking and what they're going to be talking about and how to tie it in organically. So there is an accountability. I don't know if that's the word that I would
Mhm.
want to use.
Let's roll with it.
Um, I think fans are thrilled about their favorite players getting the opportunities, signing their bags, so to speak, being the faces of various brands and different opportunities. But you're right, because women's sports in particular has, yes, celebrated the sport in all of its glory, right?
Mhm.
But it has also been a place where fans have gone far and wide to connect with their players. And
Mhm.
so there is a connection to personal brands and who these players are that to me has just a little more depth than what we see on the men's side. I'm not saying that on the men's side, fans don't love their favorite players because they love their favorite players, But I think on the women's side, because to your point, you've had to be so diligent to go find your favorite players, and you
Mhm,
probably have locked in on all of their social media before social media became this huge marketing thing, and you've
mhm.
probably read about them, and like there's a deeper connection. So to see your favorite player align with a brand that maybe doesn't align with who you thought they were also could cause a little bit of waves as well. And so there is an accountability, I think, all around. And to some end, it is also an opportunity for these players to put a stamp on who they are, right? Because I think
Mm.
these young women, not just the young women, because even the WNBA players, I think they are mindful of the brands that they want to partner with because they do want there to be symmetry and connection through everything that they do.
Ooh, I love this. So we're already hitting on the fact that the authenticity and does it make sense for X athlete and X brand to be connected, right? So
Right.
that's been part of it. And then you also mentioned this earlier. The fans are interested in those brands that sign on, that support this group of athletes in sports that haven't been getting the support. So we're gonna get to this March Madness thing. So let's take it back for a half second, back to 2021
Okay.
when the Supreme Court made their ruling, and now student athletes can be compensated for their name, image, and likeness, which everyone's calling NIL. So you and I, former student athletes, I played volleyball at NC State, you basketball at Georgetown. We didn't get a penny, but I know we are
Mm-mm.
rooting for these ones that are getting their bag now because kudos to them. Happy for everyone involved. So, by way of quick story, so the first thing we did, I was at Under Armour at the time, is we worked with Dawn Staley and her team, and we signed the entire team to what are called jerseys, like a licensing deal where we created shirt jerseys that their fans could buy from them. And it was the first time that a team had gotten a deal individually with and a major apparel brand. So we did that with South Carolina, went on to sign Aaliyah Boston to an exclusive deal. And then a year later, had Coach Staley and members of their team in a national TV commercial when we relaunched Protect This House. And I remember when that happened that there was only one other athlete, it was probably Caitlin Clark, that I saw on TV that year who had a national television commercial running. It was probably Caitlin Clark, maybe it was Gator, I can't remember. Fast forward to this past weekend, I would love to get your take on what you saw because there were multiple student athletes, mostly women's basketball players that were showing up in some pretty big ads. I would love to get your take on what you saw, what resonated, what surprised you. Just want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, I got to give a call out to United because I think what they've done this year has resonated both in terms of the commercials that I've seen, but also the way that they've clearly bought a sponsored element in the games, in the broadcast. And you've got terrific commentators. My girl Brooke
Yeah.
Risebroad, excuse me. She did a great job of tying in the United, talking about the players. I can't remember which game she was calling. I want to say it was Notre Dame and somebody. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But anyway, the through line of United both in game and these ads, I thought that was really well done. I think Nike is doing some really good stuff. They've added different pieces and personnel to the So Win campaign. The
Yeah.
NCAA tournament was the first time I saw Paige Beckers in that commercial because she wasn't
Yeah.
in the one in the Super Bowl. They've done a really good job. I think Allstate has the Notre Dame women's team
Yes,
in a
they do.
commercial.
Mhm.
Um, there's a Kentucky one with both a women's basketball player and a men's basketball player. I forget the product,
Yes.
um, but that one was cute. That was well
Mhm.
done. Juju is all over the place. Paige is all over the place. Gatorade's doing great stuff. But I think United is the one that I was kind of like, oh, that's a new player. And I really like the way they've tied that one in, both from an advertising standpoint and an in-game element.
I love that perspective. Of course, my media friend is going to talk about the media, and because sponsors pay good money for that and the integration. So kudos to United, and then also to Brooke for delivering it in a way that
Uh-huh.
resonates. How the big
Uh-huh.
three do the same with Allstate at halftime between one of the games I was watching. But I wanted to jump on a point you made around Nike. How when we
Okay.
saw that commercial, we were in awe when it came out, Super Bowl. Like, oh,
Great
this is the
commercial.
commercial, right? They won.
Mm-hmm.
But then to add this new piece to it with Paige, like what I love about that is they knew they had a winning campaign and they're just going to add more. She's relevant at this time. Drop her in. So take your winning campaign, not something brand new, something that's already working, and slide in an athlete. I think that is such a great example what brands could be doing, right? If you have something that's working, how can you adapt it in a way that makes sense to bring forward an athlete, like in this case? So obviously that's a sport endemic brand. So that's very simple. It may be harder for others, but just wanted to make that point because sometimes brands have a hard time getting started. And if you just look at like what you have going, your current campaign, can you just adapt it slightly to make it work? Maybe that's an easy way to dip your toe into this thing. But what I thought was interesting, so Juju, she
Mm-hmm.
also, I saw her Gatorade and Nike, so both
Yep.
of them through. So I noticed the separate commercials. Flage, she was all
Experian is great.
over. Experian is the one that really stuck out. She had Experian. She also had, I want to say, Mass Mutual and Powerade. But the Experian one I found very interesting because I think people have something to say around the younger generation and a lot of assumptions around what they care about, what's important. Do they care about
Uh-huh.
their credit? They just spending money and whatever. I think that we all look at her as someone who is building wealth. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
very clear that she is. But the fact that she's doing a commercial for an Experian, something that can really make or break someone's financial position,
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on their credit. Now, I'm not trying to like dumb down all that Experian does, but that's what I think of when I think about them. I thought that was so smart because she resonates. I'm assuming they want to make sure that they don't lose this next generation that everyone assumes doesn't care about those details. But to leverage her and to know that people associate her with money and with, for future being able to take care of herself, I thought was pretty genius and unexpected to use a college basketball player.
So fun tie into that one for me. The company that she's partnering with, Forgive Co., was actually started by a Georgetown alum. Eric, he emailed me this week. I'm blanking on Eric's last name. But so what she's doing, not only is she just talking about the power of Experian, but there's this campaign where she is and Forgive Co., Flage, Experian, and Forgive Co. has come together to create this debt forgiveness project for folks in Louisiana. So the commercial is one thing. One of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite pieces of social media that I have consumed in the last 48 hours is a woman who gets the piece of mail, unsolicited, I assume, and her debt is being forgiven. And she
Yeah.
is just reacting to it. I literally sent it to Eric because he emailed me, then I saw it, and then I was like, this is just too perfect timing. And so I think, again, we go back to this thing as far as authenticity and the accountability of fans. That woman, whether her debt was forgiven or not, was clearly already an LSU and Flage fan. But
Mm-hmm.
now, to your point, you have made a grand statement about what is important to you in a powerful way that resonates, right? I just think there are so many more untapped opportunities to do stuff like that because these young women care about a variety of things and they have the platforms and the ideas probably. And if they don't, there's great marketers. You collab together, teamwork makes the dream work. There is an idea that resonates in the community. That is the next step, right? When we talk about Juju, my girl here in New York runs an organization called Grow Our Game, focused on keeping young girls in sports. Shout out to my friend Janae. Those girls got T-shirts from Nike with Juju on them, and it's just Juju's eyes and her bun. And she posted a video the other day of the girls reacting. It is the most precious thing. And so again, like these things resonating in community, it's so much bigger than just the marketing dollars. Now, it's a big opportunity for companies to continue to make money in that space, but you're talking about developing brand loyalty at a very young age.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely like spot on. I definitely am agreeing with what you're saying. And I wasn't going to go there, but let me just bring this up. What I've noticed is that most brands that are getting in this NIL space, let's talk about it. Like a lot of ones were going after quarterbacks of teams and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, and everyone assumed that it was going to be about the athlete that had the most, name recognition, the most followers. And quite frankly, for the most part, that is the model that brands are going down. However, what I have experienced, and I really think brands should be considering, is all the other student
Yes,
athletes,
I'm with you. I'm
all
with
the
you.
other ones. And let me just double tap again. Let's talk about the HBCU student athletes,
Yep.
right? Like there is so much culture being created and being led from these campuses. And when we think about marketing, like the whole job is to connect with consumers. And I would say 99.9% of companies are trying to connect with young consumers who happen to be more diverse and more culturally and involved and understand and like they understand what's going on, right? You can't get in front of them if you're not down with culture. So I
Yeah.
think it'd be really smart for brands to not just work with the stars. Maybe you don't need someone to post something on their social. You need that brain power. You need those ideas. You need that cultural competency to help you in your marketing campaign.
So I'm so glad you brought this up, Sharice, because I think it to me, and I the Flages, the Jujus, Who else have we seen this weekend? The Notre Dame girls,
Yeah.
Hidalgo,
And
Miles,
the coaches, you got
Paige
Yale got
Deckers,
something, Coach Ivy, Don
Darms
Staley.
all over the place. Like, we are still talking about 10% of the pie when you talk about the numbers of student athletes. And let's not even go student athletes at large. We could just go women's basketball players, right?
Yes.
It's going to be 4 teams that make it to Tampa. You start with 64 teams. And I will not act naive in that the assumption is every 64 team has the sort of following that the Final Four will, because that's just not how it works. However, again, to me, it's more than just post this, here's a check. If there is an activation, right? What's that baby? Raven Johnson has a Nissan partnership, right? But if hypothetically, if Southern University, who was in the tournament, I think they lost to UCLA, I think. But Southern is an HBCU. If they have a Nissan partnership from now, right, and it takes you through the summer in terms of them working out this summer and getting ready to go back to basketball season, and then the Nissan is on campus during homecoming weekend, like, you create these actual touch points that start with your player, but it goes into their lives in a real and meaningful way. Then you got a Nissan activation at homecoming in the age demographic of people trying to figure out cars. Again, like, these moments, especially, Nissan was banging with us as an HBCU. There has been a commercial or two for certain brands that I found so pretentious that I was like, I'll never buy that car because that commercial is terrible. And that had nothing to do with me personally. But the moments, the things that resonate, both positive and negative, are created in moments. And I just think these marketing plans, to your point, don't get stuck up here. Yes, there is immediate brand recognition, but there is depth, I think, by doing your due diligence to find out who you can partner with in a real way, and they can take you to their community.
Ooh, listen, free game for somebody. Norfolk State took Maryland to the wire yesterday.
Ooh,
On their home floor. I'm just saying, it was a sight to see. I must say, it was unexpected. That I don't know what the matchup was for something another, but they took them to a wire. So I don't know, kind of a hot college brand popping up there at HBCU. So maybe somebody should take a look at it. Nissan, somebody, right?
For sure.
No, this has been great. So, all right. So NIL is now here, right? Student athletes are having a chance to monetize their name, image, and likeness. What do you think how do you think that it's changing college sports? NIL.
Well, there's a
changing it.
There's a terrific documentary on Amazon. I did not finish it, but it's called The Money Game. And it followed Angel Reese, Livy Dunn, Jaden Daniels, a young woman who I'm forgetting was a track athlete, and a young man, I can see his face, I can't call his name, that was on the basketball team. And these 5 athletes represent very different experiences in the NIL space. And so I think there is an assumption, and this is where it's similar to what we were just talking about. There is an assumption that all these athletes are getting paid. And while we can assure you that when we were doing it, legally at least, when nobody getting paid nothing.
No.
Right? No. These babies have an opportunity to make something, but the assumption should not be that they're all making life-changing money right now.
Right. Agree.
And this documentary actually takes you through it, and it was really cool. But I appreciated the honesty of these young people, particularly the track athlete. I really wish I could call her name. I'm going to Google it while we're chatting. She's like, I'm at LSU. I'm an excellent athlete. Why am I not clearing these dollars? Right? And this is where the reality of this thing is, it is very subjective. We know the various privileges of our society, whether you talk about whiteness, femininity, attractiveness, like when it comes to women, air quotes around femininity. So it was a really interesting dynamic. So I would say that while NIL is still new, the Wild West, the kids making major money, 7-figure deals, hand over fist, capture the headlines, that is still a very small slice of the pie.
Yeah.
And that to me is advantageous for both ends, because you have athletes who 10 grand in a semester would mean a lot to them. And you got brands that 10 grand is a good deal for them for the return on their investment. And that doesn't even necessarily only mean national brands, right? Like local brands are getting into this thing as well. And that's what the Money Game documentary was demonstrating a lot. I believe Jaden Daniels' first deal when he was at LSU was with a local law firm, I believe local law firm. So yeah, that's one of my takeaways as far as this new space.
No, I love your point about the local brand. So if you think about it, like let's put ourselves back in our young Monica and Sharice days, when we were students. Like I'm thinking about where would I have made some money? And you darn tootin', some of these local brands, like there would have been something there, like whether it's a law firm or whether it's something else, like those opportunities are there. Yes, go.
Aaliyah Armstrong was the track athlete. Trace Young is the basketball player. Just wanted to give them their name respect. Oh, Flage is also a part of that project. But continue. Yes.
Perfect. I think that that's interesting. With the local brands, sometimes I think they're a little bit intimidated. Like maybe their marketing is it's a certain model, and so the idea of introducing an athlete when maybe you just worked with the local college before is something different. What's interesting around local brands and like the local athletes is that is where they have the most brand recognition. Like you can be player number, we'll use a basketball team that's got 15, right? You could be player number 8, 9, 10, right? And people will know your face and your name, and you showing up to sign something or whatever it is that needs to happen to work for the marketing for that brand can be significant. So I think that, I guess my message here would be is that you can get into the game. There can be space. You don't have to be intimidated and think that you're only national brand will be something that an athlete is interested in. Because to your point, for some people's first deals are local and some are still rocking with local because they know those brands are showing up every game, for them to be able to do what they do. So I think that was a really good point.
Listen, to that end too, this NIL thing is still, I don't have official research in front of me. I'm just observing the landscape. Yep. But I imagine it's still heavily skewed toward male athletes, particularly when we talk about some of these deals that football teams are clearing. And the deals and the numbers do not automatically equate to a team's previous or future success.
No.
It's just the idea of the football team has the local community in a chokehold, right?
Yeah.
And so I just would continue I think that we are riding a wave in women's sports. And I will be honest, Sharice, for us in our lived experience, I've been very skeptical. I have been very skeptical because this thing continues to come back to dollars. And let's face it, as in our society at large, we have some challenges when it comes to equity. Right? And so I'm so thrilled to see so many commercials as we've discussed this year. I'm so thrilled to see attendance and viewership up. I'm so thrilled that, ESPN was smart and brought the big three back and like is capitalizing on that. However, 2 years isn't going to get it done, right? And so there's still plenty of opportunity and runway for all of these teams, all these brands rather, to find a team, show that it's legit, and get in so that the wave continues to swell.
Yes, I love that. Like, since you brought it up, I do have a few numbers in front of me. So ESPN said that it's a 200% year-over-year increase in ad sales for this year's March Madness tournament compared to last year. So that is huge. People are really making bank off of this. And they said that the championship game is actually sold out. So this is fantastic because that wasn't necessarily always the case. So you're right. The monies are flowing now. Now, is it the same numbers that CBS and that whole group is getting on the men's side? Probably not. So there is always this pressure to ensure that women's sports are generating the revenue so that people feel better about paying and the revenue shares and all that sort of thing. So, it's going to take some time, but what I appreciate is that the conversations are happening, that Deloitte's writing the reports, that this is becoming more everyday conversation to shine a light on the opportunity, but to also, to use the words you've been using, hold folks accountable to ensuring that there is, more equity and more parity in what's happening, because there's a chance for more than 1 or 2 or 3 athletes on a campus to win, right?
Absolutely. Well said. Here, friend. All right, what else we got?
Okay. Last thing I think we should talk about is just, you brought it up, just women's sports as a whole. Like, it's a wave, right? We've done a lot of talk about basketball here, and you talked about Livy Dunn gymnastics. I think Suni Lee had a commercial that was running too. I know
she
volleyball.
Was that Dick's or Foot Locker?
It was
Dick's. One of those. It was Dick's. Yeah, Dick's. Her commercial was good. Yep.
So I saw her commercial. We saw that, right? So there are some other things happening. I know that there's a multitude of professional volleyball leagues, like the Love Volleyball League just launched, but there's Athletes Unlimited, others. And I think, like you said, you went to see Gotham FC. So as we look at women's sports as a whole, what's one thing that people aren't talking about as it relates to all the sports and all the opportunity that's out there for brands and fans?
This is a little deeper than, but you know what? It's where we are. So I'm gonna go ahead and go here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Women's sports has been in a really special place when we think back to the NCAA tournament of 2021, the call out that now has allowed the women's NCAA tournament to also be known as March Madness, right? The call for equality and equity there. I'm so curious about the next 4 years of women's sports in this administration. Because so much of the community of women's sports would fall under the term DEI, which we know is under great attack. And so I don't know if it's happening in these boardrooms and these marketing meetings, but I think if a company is under pressure, and I don't know exactly how all this works because I believe most of the publicly funded entities are under real pressure. If a company is under pressure about the label of DEI, you have an opportunity to make a statement by the athletes that you support. Sometimes the work don't have to be labeled. It just needs to be done.
That part, because what makes dollars make sense, right? So like, if you're trying to make money, and again, for brands that are trying to get in the space, it's about who is your consumer? Who is the consumer of the day? Who's the consumer of tomorrow? I don't know. Most brands need to reach women. Most brands need to connect with women. I'm not saying you could only have to leverage women's sports to do that, but it is a pretty good doggone bet for certain demographics, especially certain parts of the country, and with certain sports. So it just makes sense to do the work. So I think, I don't know, companies that are getting hung up on DE&I and do we use it? Do we not use it? Let's just talk about marketing. Dollars make sense. If you were trying to reach a woman and you understand that maybe she is really passionate about X thing and it's sport or music or whatever it is, you might want to find a way to authentically connect with her, leveraging that. And if you just let business be business and leave the politics out of it, I think people will see their way and they'll see that women's sports is a great space to be in. So,
yeah.
That's all I got.
think that's a great. I will say this, and the Gotham FC game reminded me of that because their fan section is called Cloud9. And when I tell you they have not backed off of any of the stances that have been so true to women's sports, they had a hashtag on the pitch, not on physically on the pitch, but on the guardrail, I guess we'll call it. It was Believe Black Players. And of course they had the flags that represent the diverse communities, the flags of different nations. Like it was this little spot that is like almost a resistance as I looked at it. Again, as all of these things seem to be under attack, but also the electronic border around the court, or around the pitch, excuse me. Dove. I love Dove's new slogan, and I love what Dove is doing in terms of keeping girls in sports and their foundation. But one of the hashtags was "Let's Change Beauty," which I think is so powerful because we are still working against the stereotype that a strong and powerful woman in sport can be perceived as beautiful, right? Dove was one that stood out to me. Elf is there, one of their sponsors. Those two really stood out, and then CarMax was all over the place. And we've seen through lines with CarMax and other women's sports as well. But I think Dove is one of those groups that's doing it right and has been doing it right for a while. And now as women's sports has risen, so is their visibility.
And that's so special. Back to that idea of like getting in there early. The fans have been paying attention, right? So this is why Dove and Dove took like their general marketing campaign and made it sports. You know what I'm saying? Like they understood what to do. You don't have to like recreate the wheel. It's similar to kind of what Ally has been doing. They've been there from the beginning, and theirs was actually unique. I watched their spot this weekend when I was watching the games. I didn't watch every game, but they were running an evergreen spot, the one where they used to play on Ally at the end, whatever. And it stood out to me because they could have had athlete faces all over the places. They are involved in everything, and they didn't have to do that. they don't have to connect with the audience because they're already connected. So they actually
Yep.
could just their general brand message. And now you start to see the work working
Yep.
because they can really talk about what they want. So there's something really special about that. So you brought up Elf as a chance to talk quickly about beauty. Like beauty has been so interesting in terms of them breaking into sports as of late. And it's interesting because there's been some hits and probably some misses too, right? And what I mean by that is I think that beauty brands, when they're thinking about working with athletes, they got to think about whether or not an athlete might authentically use their product or if they're the right athlete to use their product. So by way of example, if you're like a skincare, brand or something, maybe the athlete that shows the most skin, or maybe they're outside the most. They play tennis. I don't know. It might be interesting to have an alignment there because it's more believable and people are associating, their skin that's exposed to the sun all the time with how do they take care of it, right? I think that it's been interesting. Everyone wants in, but everyone doesn't quite know how to do it. And I've seen some things that didn't quite match, but I'm excited brands are trying to get in there.
Yeah. Well, I love it, Sharice. I think this was a great conversation for our first intro. We didn't even get into our experience at Unrivaled, which I think has done some really good things. We'll have to hold on to that for the next episode. I'm sure we'll probably get another rollout of more commercials too as we keep going through the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. On that note, this is our first episode. So, of course, if people have things that they want us to talk about, like Unrivaled, let us know. Hit us up in the comments, DMs, whatever. We love to make sure that we're talking about the things that you love. But thanks for rocking with us. And thank you, Monica, for being here.
Of course, girl.
Okay. How the business is played.